Good morning again, boys. It's January 2nd now, and the reading for today was from Genesis chapter 2. Is it Genesis 2? Hang on a second. But we had Matthew 2 and Psalm 2 and Proverbs. So yeah, it's Genesis chapter 3 actually already. Um, and there were some interesting connections here already. Even just thinking about Genesis 3, you've got the fall of man and Satan's temptation for them to be like God. And then you've got the rage of Herod recorded in Matthew 2, right? That he wants to be rid of this challenge to his throne. And then you've got Psalm 2 that talks about the nations that conspire and plot in vain and rage against God and his sovereignty, his rule over the world. And then in Proverbs 1, it says, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. Listen, my son, to your father's instruction, and do not forsake your mother's teaching." So there's again two things that are highlighted, right? The way of the world, and there's so many things that that phrase might mean, but it's everything that's against God's plan for sovereignty and rule over all of us and each of us. And then a desire to be independent of Him. And you see that um, kind of portrayed in Psalm 2. Why the kings of the earth rise up and the rulers band together against the Lord and against His anointed, saying, "Let us break their chains and throw off their shackles." So, our natural tendency as those who are following the world is to be rid of God's rule over us, to be independent of Him. But that's foolishness, as Scripture is telling us here. And it's something that will lead to death and destruction, as we saw yesterday from Psalm 1 as well. So, the best thing for us to do is to understand the Lord's rule, to see that it is best for us, as it says at the end of Psalm 2, "Kiss the Son, or he will be angry, and your wrath will lead you to your destruction. For his wrath can fire up in a moment. Blessed are all who take refuge in him." So there's two possibilities. You can either have refuge in him, which is the way of wisdom, and things can go well. You can have peace, or shalom is the Hebrew word for it. You can have wholeness and what you were created for, your destiny, or you can be mad and reject that and have misery and eventually destruction. So again, two choices to be made. Certainly my prayer for you and for myself, as God prays for us and wants for us, is that we would choose life and blessing rather than death and destruction. And that is the way of wisdom, to fear the Lord, to do what is right. And that's what I would hope for you. I love you, boys, and I pray that each of you chooses wisely, that you wouldn't rebel against God's gracious and sovereign and helpful rule in your life, His desire to shelter you, to have you take refuge in Him, that you would choose that over your own desires and over the things that the world might tempt you to. So that's a good thing to think about today as we're reading through these sections of Scripture. So that's January 2.